G'day, it's fugitive Australian journalist Shane Dowling from the website and YouTube channel Kangaroo Court of Australia. Now, I published an article on Sunday the 1st of September titled "The Labor and Liberal Politicians Set to Make Millions from the AUKUS Money Train, the AUKUS Scam Exposed." And I'll read you out part of that article, and I'll also show you some videos of Senator David Shoebridge. He's one of the probably top experts on how dodgy the AUKUS deal is. And I'll show you 3 short videos of him in Parliament and also out of Parliament talking about it. Now, the article starts off, Liberal Party and Labor Party former politicians such as Scott Morrison, Joe Hockey and former WA Premier Mark McGowan are lining up to cash in on Australia's defence spending, which is expected to double and hit $100 billion a year. At the top of the list for the greedy former politicians is a $368 billion AUKUS submarine deal between Australia, the US and UK. Anyone who has watched the AUKUS deal knows it's a huge fraud and is nothing more than a massive slush fund for corrupt politicians to make a lot of money. And that is what we'll look at in this article. What you will see, as far as defence spending and the AUKUS deal is concerned, is that both the Labor Party and Liberal Party act as if they were one party, and they don't even try to hide it. Bondi Partners. Bondi Partners was set up by former Treasurer and former Ambassador to the US, Joe Hockey, and has a major focus of profiting from AUKUS. Joe Hockey has employed former WA Premier Mark McGowan and former Minister for Defence Marise Payne. She was Minister for Defence from 2015 to 2018. And the pictures I have up on screen are WA Premier Mark McGowan and former Minister of Defence Marise Payne from the Bondi Partners website. Now, the picture you can see on screen is Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's Twitter account on the 20th of March 2023, which says, "Good to catch up with Joe Hockey, MP, former Ambassador to the US, and Richard Spencer, former US Navy Secretary in Canberra today." And I say in the article, why was Prime Minister Anthony Albanese meeting with private citizen Joe Hockey? Was Albo thinking about his next job after politics? Was Albo helping Joe and his Bondi Partners make a few dollars? I've since found out that Richard Spencer, the former US Navy Secretary in the photo, is apparently the chairman of Bondi Partners. The article goes on to say, if you know very little about how bad the AUKUS scam is, watching the 3 short videos I'm about to show you is a must for every Australian and very educational. The chances of Australia ever getting the promised submarines is 0, as the US and UK do not have the capacity to supply them, as pointed out by Green Senator David Shoebridge. And in one of the videos, David Shoebridge on AUKUS says Australia is spending billions of dollars chasing unicorns. Now, on the 20th of March 2024, Senator David Shoebridge posted the video I'm about to show you on Twitter and says, "It is clear that the US is taking us for a ride on AUKUS. We are giving billions and contracting out a foreign policy to Washington in return. It is unlikely we will even get the extremely dangerous nuclear submarines. We called on the government to scrap AUKUS." Now, I'll play you that video.
So, to make enough nuclear submarines for Australia, they need to be knocking out 2.3. They're knocking out 1. I've got to tell you, that's some awkward AUKUS maths there, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And when, in the early 2030s, the US is going to be asked by Australia, "Please, sir, please can we have some nuclear submarines?" What's the US president going to say? We haven't got enough for our own purposes. There's no way we're going to be giving them to Australia. And hidden in plain sight in the legislation that's been approved for AUKUS in the US Congress is a kill switch that says if there aren't enough for the US, there's no way in hell they'll give any to Australia. Mm-hmm. And that is despite the Albanese government giving $4.7 billion of Australian public money to the US for US jobs and investment in US shipbuilding, which will include, by the way, investment in the US building their next intercontinental ballistic class of nuclear submarine, the Columbia class. So the question is, how many billions more will Australia sink into the disaster zone that is the AUKUS submarine deal, Pillar 1? How many billions more? How many years will be wasted before we finally jump on an off-ramp? Because the overwhelming majority of Australians don't want us tied unquestionably to the US alliance, don't want us to spend these billions of dollars chasing unicorns. Let's end the deal now while we can. Let's save some dignity and save some sovereignty.
Now, on the 20th of August 2024, Senator David Shoebridge posted a video I'm about to show you on Twitter. And he said a Labor and Liberal committee looking at the new AUKUS base in HMAS Stirling off the coast of Perth failed to mention the fact that it would manage intermediate level radioactive waste from US and UK submarines, just ignoring the concerns of the community. Now I'll show you that video.
I can't comprehend how the committee failed to reference one of the most significant concerns that came from the community, a concern that is grounded in the evidence given by our Panzer and Defence. How is it not mentioned that this $750 million facility that is only going to handle nuclear waste coming from UK and US nuclear submarines, it's only going to handle nuclear waste generated by foreign nations' nuclear submarines, that's its only purpose. They were told that Defence had acknowledged that if there was some intermediate significant servicing required to be done of UK and US submarines, that it may entail intermediate level nuclear waste, things like shielding and other material that's close to the reactor. They were told that, and yet they didn't mention it. Is it because it's embarrassing to the government that it wasn't mentioned in the public communication that came from our Panzer when they consulted with the community on the licence? Is it because Defence has failed to mention that in any of its public communications? Is it because this committee, which is dominated by Labor and the Coalition, are part of that collective silence about the real costs and the real risks of AUKUS? Well, I think it is. Because it's awkward, isn't it? It's awkward pointing out that actually this $750 million facility, paid for by Australian taxpayers, is only designed to service UK and US nuclear submarines. It's part of a plan to build a substantial US and UK, largely US nuclear submarine base on Australian soil. It's part of a $7 billion plan to expand that base on Australian soil. It will be part of making Perth a nuclear target, and in the meantime, it will also be storing intermediate-level nuclear waste, which has a wholly different risk profile to the low-level nuclear waste. All of that's inconvenient, and that's probably why none of it was mentioned in this report.
And on the 14th of August 2024, Senator Dave Shoebridge posted a video I'm about to show you on Twitter, and he said, the new AUKUS 2.0 deal Albanese has just signed is so bad it's hard to wrap your head around. So here's an explainer. Now I'll show you that video.
The Labor government finally made public the new AUKUS 2.0 agreement, and it must be the most one-sided international agreement Australia has ever put pen to. There are so many problems that it's hard to wrap your head around how anyone could have agreed to it. So here's a little thought experiment. Imagine I'm trying to buy like a second-hand car or a second-hand truck from Uncle Sam's car dealership. Well, before I can buy the car, I need to pay Uncle Sam billions and billions of dollars to modernise and uplift his car yard and the car factories. I also need to promise Uncle Sam that I'll only drive the car to places he wants and only use it in ways he approves of. Otherwise, he can take it back. I'll also not get this car for maybe another decade at least. And during that time, while they've got my money, if Uncle Sam's car dealership decides doesn't have enough cars for themselves, they get to keep it. And I have no way to claw back the money I've given them. It's also a well-known fact that Uncle Sam doesn't actually have enough cars to sell to me and won't have enough for the foreseeable future for their own needs. But despite all this, let's say I do end up getting a car, and if in the process of reversing it out of Uncle Sam's car dealership, the engine blows up because I was sold a dud, I actually have to pay Uncle Sam for the costs and damages. Oh, and Uncle Sam also gets to decide how much I pay for all the fuel for the car, which he happens to also be selling to me. Now, if you think that's a bad deal, you're right. But that is exactly the Albanese government has signed us up to, with support from Dutton's coalition, in this new AUKUS agreement. Only it's not for a $40,000 Ford Focus, it's for a multi-billion-dollar bunch of second-hand nuclear submarines. The US and the UK have found a sucker in Australia and must be laughing all the way to the bank with this deal. We need to scrap the agreement. The more we sink into this rigged deal, the worse it'll get for Australia and Australians. We need to have a defence force that's focused on defending Australia, not threatening our neighbours, and we need a foreign policy that's actually made in Canberra, not Washington. And to get there, the first step is ripping up AUKUS.
Now I'll go on to say in the article, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison chasing the AUKUS cash. Former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison now works for American Global Strategies as non-executive vice chairman. It says on the AGS website, AGS delivers unparalleled expertise for our clients by assessing the global geopolitical environment, devising strategies for navigating US governmental processes and policies, assisting on international basis transactions, and managing crisis situations domestically. AGS provides expert insight and guidance to clients in defence, aerospace, maritime, technology, finance and private equity sectors. AGS was founded by former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien and former National Security Council Chief of Staff Alex Gray. Our staff is comprised of professionals who have served at the White House, State Department, Pentagon and on Capitol Hill. The firm's primary office is in Washington, D.C. Now, the picture on the screen is Scott Morrison from the American Global Strategies website. And Scott Morrison also works for AUKUS investor Dine Maritime. Dine Maritime's website is one page and only says an alternative asset management company focused on investing in national security technology and supply chain resiliency for the US, UK and Australian technology, with no other information. And I asked the question, how many legitimate businesses have a one-page website that only has their business name and one paragraph describing the business? A perfect fit for Morrison, I suppose. Now, News.com reported in January 2024, Scott Morrison has come under fire for taking on 2 jobs in the US private defence sector after the former Prime Minister announced his exit from politics. After revealing plans to resign in February, Mr. Morrison said he would be joining consultancy firm American Global Strategies as non-executive vice chairman. He will also assume a strategic advisory role with AUKUS investor Dine Maritime, alongside former US Secretary of State and ex-CIA Director Mike Pompeo. The venture capital company invests in technologies related to the Joint Security Agreement that was orchestrated under Mr. Morrison's leadership. Green's defence spokesperson, David Shoebridge, said Mr. Morrison's swift move into the private defence sector was an example of why the public was cynical about politicians. Morrison is leaving politics only to grab his very unfair share of the billions of dollars of public money that he shoveled into AUKUS. Now, on social media, someone's already commented on the article and said, AUKUS is creating a lot of jobs. In Adelaide, they're already employing people or training people at school, etc. Well, the thing is, JobKeeper employed a lot of people too, but it was really a scam for the billionaires to rip off billions of dollars and the millionaires to rip off billions of dollars. And that's what AUKUS is a scam. We'll probably never see any of the submarines, but the politicians and former politicians will get millions and millions. And the likes of Joe Hockey and his Bondi partners and Scott Morrison and Labor politicians, well, they're already making millions. Now, in the article, I go on to name other politicians who are already got their snout in the trough, the AUKUS trough. And I'll put a link to that article below this video on YouTube. So make sure you click on that and read that article. Because AUKUS is a scandal that's just going to keep on growing. We're not going to get submarines and the government's going to pour a lot of money down the drain while we're, experiencing a cost of living crisis, a rental crisis. And a lot of Australians are doing it tough and they're pouring all these billions and billions of dollars into a slush fund called AUKUS so they can rip the Australian public off like they did with JobKeeper. Now, the video you just watched and the article I just published, you won't see elsewhere because all the old media are silenced. And I'm Kangaroo Court of Australia's independent media. So please support my Patreon account or PayPal account. I currently have 451 patrons donating $2,444 a month. And I need to almost double it to become financially viable. I estimate I need 600 supporters to become financially viable on Patreon. So I've got 149 to go. So please support that. You can donate any amount. $3, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30, $40, $50 a month, whatever suits your budget. It all helps out in a big way. The link for the Patreon account and PayPal account will be below this video on YouTube and also on my website. And please share this video on social media and please hit the like and subscribe button. Other than that, thank you for your time and have a good day.